Good day, folks. Welcome to another episode of Pirkei Avos. That's the Ethics of the Fathers with Rabbi Chaim Coffman. This is such an exciting class, an exciting lesson. The depth of the morals that are in Pirkei Avos are something that we should, as B'nai Noach, treasure because the Hebrew people share it amongst themselves and have for thousands of years. And the depth and the working over and the heritage of the ethics that are there are the things that we should treasure, that we can actually begin to implement. When you get the ethics and you understand the moral behind something, it becomes part of your being. And this is what I believe that the Hebrew people display more than anyone is a true God-honoring way of functioning. And so without any further ado, I think we're continuing still with Mishnah 2. Let's welcome Rabbi Chaim Coffman. How are you today, Rabbi? I'm glad to hear you're over your cold.
Yeah, hopefully. Half the country is probably a little bit underwater. Most people have some sort of bug or who knows what, but just getting some nice wind, rain. So getting people in England who live here are getting part of, feeling right at home. Plenty of, we still need a lot of rain, but whatever, windy, rain. This is the type of weather we like. That's it. So November was an extremely dry month. So we definitely need, a lot of rain. But we got enough rain in a couple of days that the Sea of Galilee rose 9 centimeters. So that's already. That's already something. And the funny part about being in Israel is most of the land, most of the rocks made out of limestone, right? So limestone, as anyone may know, water evaporates pretty quick. So we have no choice. We need the rain. But you know what they do when they have the, the Sea of Galilee. So, they have a certain black line, certain red line, and certain line, they draw where you say, okay, it's forbidden to pump. Right, so a number of years we had droughts. We had droughts here, and didn't have a lot of rain, so they just keep lowering the red line, and then whatever. Eventually caught up, and then there was an overflow, and then whatever. A number of years also, lacking rain, but we still need, we still probably a couple meters short, meter and a half, or probably a couple meters short from the, from the top. But there's snow in the Golan, there's snow in the Hermon, up near Sva, so whatever. We still need. We still need rain, but yeah, it's coldish, not as
cold as Canada.
Ain't gonna be as cold as Canada. It's not gonna be as cold as Boston, but whatever, it's still cold. And you have to remember, everything here is made out of brick. So and electricity is expensive, so you're not gonna heat up every room. So there are always drafts. You're always draft. You always, if you're wet, you never get dry. That's just, it's just the way it is. But whatever, it's part of the
Boston, you were right on the Atlantic Ocean, right? I mean, so you would have got that.
I remember we got, plenty of snow, cold, or sometimes just got cold, no snow. I would always praise for snow. My father, Avos, would say, snow's bad for business. I said, yeah, but I don't have to go to school. So, it's going to be a benefit, somewhat of a benefit to that. Anyway, no one's interested in the weather. So we are still in the first chapter, second Mishnah, right? We didn't get very far last week. We spoke about Torah, right? We'll just recap the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Shimon the righteous was among the survivors of the Great Assembly. And what did he used to say? He used to say the world depends on 3 things. In other words, the world will not survive without these 3 things. Torah, avodah, gimul chasadim, right? Torah study, service of God. We'll see what avodah is. We're going to discuss that in a second. And on kind deeds, or what we call chesed, gimilus chesed. So 2 definitions of what avodah is. First definition, a lot of the commentaries say, what does avodah mean? It means service. What service? It means service to God, i.e. sacrifices. Right? The sacrificial system. Now, Talmud says clear that if there wouldn't be a sacrificial system, the world would cease to exist. Now, today, you can't bring sacrifices. You have a temple. Temple's been destroyed, and even if you wanted to bring sacrifices, well, the mufti on the Temple Mount, right? The Muslims in charge, because we gave them the keys right after we took the Western Wall in 1967. Regardless regardless if you wanted to take a sheep, and bring it up there. First of all, you can't go up there anyway. Most rabbinical authorities hold a Jew can't go up there, right? Because we don't know exactly where a person's going to stand and the holiness and all that. So there are people that say we do know where, and there will be people that will go up, but the vast majority of rabbinical authorities today hold you're not allowed to go up. So even if you didn't have that problem, you try and bring a sheep. You try to bring a sheep up there, forget it. Right? The police will stop you. The Arabs will stop you. Everyone and their mother will stop you. It's game over. Don't pass go, don't collect 200. You are not going to bring a sheep up there. Right? That's it. It can't be done. Right? It can't be done because, A, practical purposes, and it can't be done because of impurity. There's no way to make a person pure. You don't know where you're stepping, and that's it. So, even though there was a sacrificial system, now some people think, there's only a sacrificial system, there was never prayer. Right? So that's a big mistake, because even though there was a sacrificial system, there were people that said certain prayers, right? They were in sync, when the sacrifices would be given. So they would say certain prayers. Some would say more, some would say less, but some, people think, well, when prayer came after the sacrificial system stopped, like it happened by osmosis. It happened like, out of nowhere, but it's not true. Right? Prayer did not get codified till much later. The first prayer book was written by Rav Saadia Gaon in the 5th century. Right? So after the temple's destroyed already, so that's already a much longer, a longer time period. Right? You're talking about hundreds of years before you even have a proper prayer book. So you can say, so what do people pray? So some people said more, some people said less. Right, there was part of a morning service. Eventually, it was fixed by Abraham. Afternoon service fixed by Isaac, and the evening service, whole question that was fixed by Yaakov, by Jacob, but it wasn't obligatory. Right. In other words, the whole discussion in the Talmud goes back and forth. Was it obligatory? It wasn't. It back and forth. In the end, the conclusion is it wasn't obligatory, but we took it on. Right, but the Jewish people took it on. So a woman. Right, let's think about women for a second. A woman has an obligation to pray at least once a day. Some rabbinical authorities say even twice a day, but everyone agrees she doesn't have to pray at night. Right? It's certainly a mitzvah bound by time. Right? So prayer for sure, 100% is on a Torah level, as the Rambam tells us. But the times of the prayers themselves, right, is not. It's all rabbinic. So even though prayer existed at the time, right, as we mentioned before, what to say, how many times to say, everyone did whatever they wanted, right? It wasn't fixed until later. So some people have the issue. We'll get to prayer in a second. We're really on the sacrifices, but I'll just mention one thing, and that is some people have an issue. They say, why can't I say whatever prayer I want? Why do I have to say these fixed prayers 3 times a day, added prayers on Shabbos, festivals? What happened to spontaneity? Nothing. If a person wants, they could go into a synagogue, open up the ark, and pour their heart out. Nothing wrong with that. Does that take the place of prayer in general? No. Right? Can you say your own prayers? Yes. But again, the rabbis understood, I think we mentioned this before, by the men of the Great Assembly. Some people, will say this is the third and long or a punt. They'll say, why will they say that? Because I'll make the claim that the men of the Great Assembly could bring people back from the dead, right? But the community, the people weren't worthy of it, so they didn't do it. And they're the ones to put the prayers together. So I would say, and again, I'm a pretty simple person, I would say that if they had the ability to bring people back from the dead, but the generation wasn't worthy, my Rebbe can't do that. His Rebbe couldn't do that. The Rambam, well, maybe Rambam could have done it, but whatever. It wasn't done. If they could do it, and no one else can, even though the generation wasn't worthy, then guess what? That's good enough for me. Right? So what is the essence of this definition of sacrifices, right? That's the first definition. Avoida is a sacrificial system. So the sacrifices mean that you're going to bring animals. All the PETA or PETA activists going to be jumping up and down, yelling and screaming, right? What did this animal do to deserve to die? right? So here we understand, we'll get to the animals in a second, we understand that the essence of the sacrifices are all about self-sacrifice. It's about self-sacrifice for the sake of the mitzvahs. In other words, there are different types of sacrifices. The person would bring a free will offering. You could bring a burnt offering, bring a sin offering, right? You could bring a mincha offering. But imagine a person brought a sin offering. That sin offering, he did something wrong, so he has to atone for himself. So when he brings the sin offering, what happens? That animal, for better or for worse, all you pet activists just, sit in your seat, keep it quiet for a while. Nonetheless, we're allowed to use them. The animal didn't do anything to die, but God says, you know what? You're allowed to use the animal for what you want. God wanted these animals to be used as sacrifices. Now, you're not allowed to just do whatever you want with animals. You can't just do experimentation for no reason. There's a response written by the Noda B'Yehuda about 150 years ago. Noda B'Yehuda from Prague wrote, are you allowed to hunt for sport? Now, obviously, this isn't the topic, but I'm just going to throw this out there. So he holds for a Jew to hunt for sport is forbidden. Why is it forbidden? Because you're sending out animals to trap other animals. It's an act of cruelty. Right? This is a non-Jewish thing. What we'll call a goyish thing. People hunt for fun. Right? They're not hunting because they're starving. If they're hunting for the starving, it's one thing. Right? Obviously, you can't, shoot an animal. You have to ritually slaughter it if you're Jewish. So what do you do if you're starving? Okay, it's a whole discussion. But in general, yeah.
I'm sorry, don't mean to stop you. Just what about catch and release fishing? Because we got so many lakes here in Canada. It's very, very popular. A lot of Americans come up here for the fishing. We have beautiful fish, but a lot of them are catch and release fishermen. They just catch it and put it back. They do it for sport of catching, but they put it back. It might still do harm, but the point of the matter is they're not doing it for food. If they're doing it for sport but releasing, is there an issue with that, or it's still over the line?
I don't know if that makes a difference. You're not, again, you could be killing the fish also, by taking them out. You're not, you're certainly not doing it, for food. You're, I guess, in some way trapping other animals, and hunting like deer or bison or all these other things or whatever it is. That's 10 times worse. Right, that's 10 times worse because certainly what are you going to use them for? You're going to stuff the head and put it on your mantle, right? Like some people do. So, that's probably worse, right? Hunting for the sake of sport, hunting these type of things, that's probably 10 times worse. Taking fish and throwing them back, is that a similar thing? It's probably less of an act of cruelty, but it's probably still not a good thing, to do. And the whole point is that it's bringing out negative character traits that
you could be doing more with your time.
That's another thing. You could definitely be doing more with your time, but here, at least when you're going after deer, and another type of animals or whatever, not only you're scaring them, it's cruel, right? You're sending these dogs out there and whatever, and it's cruel. So who gives you a right to be cruel? So you got to say, okay, so over here, you put part of the body. Part of the animal, you sacrifice it. Some of the insides go in. Maybe the whole thing goes in. Goes on the fire. It depends what it is. And part the Kohen gets and, et cetera, to survive because that's what he does. So in that sense, it's permissible because that's what God says to do. Now, again, you're not allowed to abuse animals. We can use animals for scientific experimentation, for cures for diseases, right? That's not an act of cruelty. That 100%. Should be okay. But having them in general and just abusing them, that's totally forbidden, right? Pit bull fighting and, cockfighting, which is illegal, right? Definitely
illegal. So stay
illegal.
humane.
Yeah, that you're not allowed to do, but also it's cruel. You're training these animals to be vicious, right? Who says that is permissible? One of the actually, I spoke on Tanakh Talk a few days ago about gambling and, whether it's permissible or not according to Torah. There was a question in the Mishnah, different people who are not allowed to give testimony, right, that are blemished where they're not allowed to give testimony. And one of them are pigeon racers. right? There are a few definitions of what a pigeon racer is. One of them is Taka. They take pigeons and they race, right? Like like you would normally think. Another thing is that they trap or they go after other pigeons and draw them to their where they are or where they live or whatever, where their coop, right, or whatever, and then they get trapped that way, right? So that would be forbidden because you're using these pigeons to steal. It's all right, just like gambling is a form of stealing. It's also a form of stealing. In any case, we're allowed to use these animals as long as we don't abuse them. And God tells us these are sacrifices you have to bring. Now, obviously, we can't do that today. And what is the word for sacrifice in Hebrew? The word for sacrifice in Hebrew is korban. Right? They translate it as sacrifice, but it really means, what's the root of the word korban? Is kuf reish beis. Give a little bit of Hebrew grammar here. Right? The word kuf reish beis, karev, means to draw close. So it means that when a person would bring a sacrifice, obviously he wouldn't sacrifice it, the Kohen would sacrifice it, right? He would make it, so if a person sacrificed an animal, and that animal was supposed to be you, let's say it's a sin offering, you're going to think differently. You see this animal slaughtered right in front of you. Makes a tremendous impression. Comes along the Vilna Gaon, 250 years ago, Rav Elijah Vilna, says that before he died, he wanted to see one thing. He wanted to see what a person looked like before and after a sacrifice was given. They might say, what's the big deal? Right? Who cares what a person looks like before and after? The Vilna Gaon understood that a person cannot remain the same individual if he saw an animal slaughtered in front of them. In other words, if they see an animal that they're bringing this animal as a sin offering. You did something wrong, you have to bring this animal as a sin offering, and the purpose of the animal is to atone for you. Now again, you're going to tell me the animal didn't do anything to deserve it. You're right, but God says you're allowed to use this animal, and it becomes a sanctification. Sanctification of God's name. Using the animal to atone for what we've done. It comes on the Vilna Gaon and says, if you're supposed to give a sin offering, how can it be you're going to be the same person before and after? You saw this animal right in front of you get slaughtered. So I'll give you a more practical thing and say, okay, that was like, 250 years ago. Where are we holding today? So I was in Chile a number of years ago and still not exactly sure what my soul deserved to be there. But in any case, I was there teaching in school. The job didn't work out. I was there for 6 months instead of 2 years. Whatever, part of my travels around the world. So once I was there, so I went to help somebody with a ritual slaughter, which I thought for sure would make me into a vegetarian. So thank God that didn't happen. And so I went to this ritual slaughter, helped out there. And at one point, I wanted to see from beginning to end. Right? I wanted to watch what happened from beginning to end. I wanted to imagine I was liable for a sacrifice and that this animal was going to atone for my sin, for whatever I did. So I watched them as they got the animal ready. They held the animal down. The ritual slaughter comes in, right? So I'm not won't get too graphic here, right? Slits the throat, hits the windpipe, the trachea at the same time, right? The animal dies, and whatever goes through the process of being cut up and everything else, and being salted and all that. So I went to watch step by step to imagine, to make like some sort of visual thing that I could put in my mind, right? What ritual slaughter is and what a sacrifice really is all about. Right? If you brought a sacrifice, okay, it got burnt up or whatever, it's one thing. If you brought a sacrifice and it was supposed to be for you, and that animal should have been you, and you're allowed to use this animal. There's a command. You have a sin offering. This is the animal you bring. This is what's done. But that could have been you. That really should have been you. So I tried to imagine, what you're thinking when you see this animal get slaughtered. And that had, made a tremendous impression. Because in Torah in general, there are a lot of things that are very hard to understand, right? So one way to try and understand it to the best of your ability is to visualize it, to make it so that I make it realistic. The person's learning, let's say, Tractate Baba Kama, it's all about damages. Your ox gored my ox, right? And you're talking about oxes. Well, I grew up in a suburb of Boston. I didn't see any oxes running around. It's a lot of things running around when I didn't see oxes, right? So you're going to say, okay, this doesn't sound so exciting. How much was your ox worth? What did it do? Did it gore a person? Was it a goring ox? Did it only do it once? What's the value? Is there a difference in value? Right? Did someone get injured? Do you have to pay for embarrassment? You have to pay for medical bills, right? It doesn't, sometimes,
the ethics are there, though, yeah.
So a person will learn and they'll say, like, what does that have to do with me, right? So instead of saying an ox, let's make it, 21st century, person had a car, right? And his car hit someone else. Now the question is, he missed the red light, he didn't. A person always causes damage. So how much does he have to pay? And what happens? Okay, that's a lot more, quote unquote realistic. But you have to bring it down to this world, right? You have to make it, practical. So today we are very 100% disconnected to the system of sacrifices. People think it's like voodoo, it's other things. It's, I don't know, maybe Indian custom, who knows what, but they think it's archaic. If you told me to ask most secular Jews, think it's going to be a sacrificial system when the next temple's going to be built? I think you're a wacko.
Question about that.
Yeah, they're going to think you're a wacko. First of all, what do you think? It's going to be a new temple? There is a new temple. We're going to go back to medieval times, right? We're going to say, okay, Bessie, let's go. Whoa, right? Let's go. Got to bring, got to go to the Beis HaMikdash. Got to go to Jerusalem. Got to bring the sacrifices. We're not connected to this. We have no connection to this at all. So, yeah, go ahead.
It's just a perfect timing because somebody did ask, well, will there be sacrifice during the time of Mashiach? Is what they're asking. So I guess, once the third temple is up, will there be sacrifices?
Seems like there will be.
Knowing what's behind the scenes and under the hood.
Seems like there should be, right? It doesn't mean prayer goes out the window, right? You're still going to have prayer as well. I mean, at that point, whoever survives, right? Maybe we'll get to this, a little bit later when we speak about Chesed, right? But whoever's going to survive, a third dies straight away. In that final war, a third get injured and a third survived. And the third that get injured, see what happens to them. If they actually survive or not. But, be that as it may, prayer is not going to disappear. Right? Prayer will still be there. You're going to tell
Amen.
me when the Messiah comes, we're all going to be doing Ratzon Hashem. There will be no evil inclination. Everybody will be doing God's will, Jew or non-Jew. Right? So, I had somebody say, going back to Jerusalem, it's cold. Today it's cold, it's rainy. It's like, couldn't imagine coming back to Jerusalem when the Messiah comes. I'm like, you're not going to care. I knocked this guy's argument off, and I said, but at the end of the day, you're going to be doing God's will. You're not going to be having an evil inclination. You're not going to worry about if it's cold or not. This guy's like, let's say a little bit far from Torah. This guy's like, it doesn't matter. It's cold. I wouldn't be interested in coming to Jerusalem. I said, the Messiah is there. You survived. You don't have an evil inclination. It's been demolished. You're going to sit there and complain? Wear an extra sweater. Get an extra sweater. What are you worried about? It's going to be an unbelievable time. See miracles like I haven't seen since Egypt. And you puny, brain-headed idiot are going to say, but it's cold. It's cold. What am I going to do? Get a life. Any case, so that's one aspect of avoda. Right? What's the other aspect of avoda that we spoke about? A little bit means prayer. Right? Avoda means prayer. The Talmud asks, what is the service of the heart? Right? Mazeh avoda shebelev, Talmud asks. What is the service of the heart? Service of the heart is prayer. Now, when it comes to prayer in general, Right? A person's going to pray. They should pray with proper intention. Now, are we talking about Kabbalistic intention? No. Talking about understanding the words, knowing what you're doing, that you're standing in front of a king. Right? So you're asking for your needs. Right? A Jew says 3 times a day. Not on Shabbos. It's a different, what we call a different Shmona Esrei, Amidah, whatever you want to call it. There are a lot of things we ask for in prayer. We ask for health. We ask for livelihood. We ask for knowledge. We ask for spiritual redemption, physical redemption. Right? A lot of different things. But a person has to worry, has to understand that when it comes to prayer, we don't always have the greatest intention. So for certain things, you need more intention. Certain things, you need less intention. But you have to know you're standing in front of the King of Kings. Now, non-Jews in general, I saw brought down, that non-Jews in general think God is so lofty and God is up there. What does he care about what's going on down here? Why should he worry about us? Right? Because we essentially are an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. Which means like you live in the prairies, right? You live in a small town, right? Part of a bigger city, right? Nearby or whatever. Part of a state. We'll say in the States, right? Part of a state. Part of a country. Part of a continent. We're getting smaller. Part of a planet. We're getting smaller. Part of a galaxy. If you can read these words, you don't need glasses, right? Part of a galaxy. Far, far away. Right? So a person thinks in general, what am I going to say to God? What am I going to say to God? I'm going to say, God, those rings of Saturn, those are unbelievable. God's like, Chaim, thank you very much. I made those rings. Jupiter, what a huge place. Unbelievable. Mars, Venus. God's like, of course. I put these things into existence. God needs my prayer? He doesn't need my prayer. He doesn't need my prayer. He gives me the ability. To pray. We'll give an example. We'll give a modern day example. I heard a great rabbi give this example. And the example was, who came a number of years ago to come sing in Tel Aviv? None other than Michael Jackson. Right? He was here, had a concert, whatever it was, and they interviewed people. Waiting for him to come out of his hotel, or what they'll call in the vernacular, groupies, right? So he had some groupies there, and they interviewed somebody, and they said, like, what are you doing here? He said, so the person said, I just want to tell him how great I think his music is. So the interviewer said, but he may not give you the time of day. He may not even look at you. He may not even speak to you. He goes, it doesn't matter. I just want to let him know I'm here. Right? So what's the parable? Okay, we're not going to compare Michael Jackson to God, obviously. Right? But in this case, when you look at prayer, God needs my prayer. He's like, oh, thank you very much for coming. I really need to boost my ego. I don't have a big enough ego. Tell me how great the stars are, the moon, God needs that? He doesn't need that. He gives me the ability to draw close. He wants to have that connection. Would someone rebuild? Notice I say rebuild. Would someone rebuild the Twin Towers and then disappear? You say, I'm not going to have a connection to it? Of course you're going to have a connection to it. You just built this monumental structure. Who's going to build something and disappear? But you're going to say, but God is so lofty. God is so up there. What does he need us for? Now, technically speaking, that's a fallacy. Why? You'll tell me, well, God doesn't really need anybody. That's true. But say, come Rosh Hashanah. Come Rosh Hashanah, Jews have an obligation to make God king. We're in synagogue most of the day. And there's judgment. There are 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. There's judgment of the individual. There's judgment of the world. Now, all you non-Jews out there watching, you also have an obligation. You're also going to get judged. Doesn't mean you have to pray like we do. but there's also judgment for the entire world. See, we are a universal religion, right? Before January 1st, or before December 25th, what happened in the world? Nothing. It was like Genesis chapter 2. Tohu vavohu. It was like chaos. Remember the back of that Led Zeppelin album? It was total chaos. Nothing existed. Before Muhammad's flight from Mecca to Medina. Did the world exist before that? It's like nothing happened. Right? World history starts from that. Comes along the Jews. And the Jews say, if you want a portion in Torah, you can join. Right? You don't have to be a Jew. What is Rosh Hashanah? Is Rosh Hashanah the birth of the Jews? No. It's Yom Harat Olam, we say in the prayer book. It's the day of the creation of the world. Not Jews. It's universal. If you want to join, you can join. You don't want to join, you don't have to, but realize there'll be repercussions. Right? You can still be a non-Jew. Still eat shrimp. It's a good deal. Right? But at the end of the day, a person thinks what I do doesn't matter. Right? They think that, so why did I bring this thing up about Rosh Hashanah before I get sidetracked? I bring this thing up about Rosh Hashanah because how can God be king? Nice philosophical question. If he doesn't have servants, who's going to make him king? It's a very deep philosophical question. Because you tell me, isn't God king without us? He's king. What was God doing before? And this will answer your question before, about the age of the earth and different things and the flood and all that. What was God doing before he created this world? Playing tiddlywinks? No. He was busy destroying other worlds. For whatever reason. We're not privy to that. So he's busy doing other things. He didn't need these other worlds. So you could say the world's 1 billion years old. Not a contradiction. Because you have these other worlds that he destroyed. It could be before. Or he can make everyone into an apikoros, into a heretic, and make them think this world is much older than it is, just by circumstantial evidence, right? Which doesn't prove anything. Doesn't prove anything in science, but couldn't have God, we'll go in a stretch here, couldn't have God made the world look older than it is? He probably could have, because he can do anything. So the reality is, he doesn't really need my prayers. He doesn't need me to make him king, right? But the flip side is, if you don't make him king, who's he king over? He can be king over the animals. The animals don't have, they're just programmed DNA. He's certainly king above, right? He's in control of the sun, the moon. He keeps everything the way it should be. But God shows humility because he shows he cares about the minutest of detail. If you read the end of the book of Job, you read the last few chapters of the book of Job, where Job seems to complain. God talks about different animals, different birds, different animals that he watches over. He says, you take a look at these birds, they just throw their young out. Right? Certain type of bird, throw the eggs out, the eggs could be destroyed. No more species. That's it. They're, certain birds are cruel. God says, I take care of them. I make sure nothing happens to them. I make sure that the species continues. Can you do that, Job? No. Right? He talks about other things. Other type of animals. And then he talks about the big one. The big owl, the big Leviathan. Right? His breath could have killed you. His teeth could rip you to shreds. Right? Whatever it is. Some people say it was a whale, it was a sea monster, it was, who knows? Right? It was, so he says, so he salted away the female because if they would have reproduced, right, the Talmud says the world would have been destroyed. Totally destroyed. So you might ask the question, which we're not going to answer, but you could have asked the question, why would God make something just salted away for the future? What would be the purpose? If you're going to tell me they're going to be fruitful and multiply, great, but then it's going to destroy the world. Can't destroy the world, so I'll salt it away, and I'll leave it for the righteous of the world to come. So the joke is that, when Messiah comes, we're all going to have this big feast of the Leviathan. right? We're going to have this big feast. It's a fish. Why is it a fish? Why is it a fish? So the joke is that they say, oh, whose hechsher is this? Whose rabbinic supervision is this? Oh, it's me? No, I'll take the fish. I'll take the fish. It's okay. Right? But, all jokes aside, God says, I can play around with this fish as much as I want. I can take out Saturn, take the rings, and I can make him jump through and have a great time. Better than Barnum and Bailey. Right? Unbelievable. Better than any circus. God says, if I leave you alone in this fish, repeat after me. Yiskadal v'yiskadash. That's the mourner's prayer. You're no longer in this world. He will totally destroy you. Then there's nothing that you can do to save yourself. So
terrible place.
Yeah. So in that sense, God says, you're questioning me? You question how I run the world? You don't even get up to my smallest pinky, to my smallest toenail. We'll anthropomorphize. Who are you to say anything? Could you take care of these animals? No. Could you stand the breath of Leviathan? No. So what are you complaining about? Right? So in this sense, a person thinks what I do doesn't matter. Right? I'll give one other example. Give one other example of Nefesh HaChaim. Nefesh HaChaim, written by Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin. Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin, famed student of the Vilna Gaon. He started the Volozhin yeshiva, and all the yeshivas today learn in the same style as that yeshiva, more than 250 years ago. Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin says, what happened when Adam and Eve ate from the tree? God gave one command. Don't eat from the tree. Whatever you do, don't eat from it. From the tree of knowledge. What happens? You got the snake. Snake comes in, convinces Eve. Eve says, I don't want to die. Gives to Adam. That's it. You brought death to the world. Now, says Rav Chaim of Volozhin. Rav Chaim of Volozhin, what is this tree of knowledge? What is this tree of knowledge? So he says the tree of knowledge represented all the spiritual worlds. Right? According to Kabbalah, there are 10 spiritual worlds. Now he says each world is sustained, is strengthened, whatever this means, by the world above it. Right? So you have the 10th spiritual world, the ninth is protecting it, keeping it going. 8th protecting the 9th, 7th the 8th, blah, 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 till you get to the top. What's protecting all 10 altogether? God's heavenly throne. The key say a kavod. How all this works? Can't answer. It's Kabbalah. I'd have to kill you all. It'd be very unpleasant. I don't want to have to go to jail. In general, though, what happened? All the spiritual worlds now totally in flux. They go like this, totally spread out. So now the world, the spiritual world, are all messed up because Adam and Eve ate from the tree. So there are two repercussions. One repercussion is they brought death to the world. Death is not a Jewish concept. Death never should have been, but God understood. Man could do this. So we had to change the world. Right? That's why we have to go into the ground. Right? Because in order to get true atonement, in this world, you're going to get judged, but you have to go in the ground. Right? As the Torah says, that you're going to go back into the dust. You came from the dust, you go back to the dust. Now again, that shouldn't have been, but that's the reality. When a person dies, according to Kabbalah, the first person you see is Adam. And you tell him, because of you, I had to go through this process. And what does Adam say? He nods. That's part of his atonement for eternity. In either case, Adam and Eve ate from the tree. The only way to fix up the spiritual worlds is by doing mitzvahs. If we do mitzvahs, we bring that double helix together. Right? That DNA molecule, we make it stronger. You make a blessing, you pray, you do mitzvahs, you do chesed. We'll get to chesed in a minute. Right? You do all these things, you strengthen the spiritual world. If you do the wrong thing, and you curse, and you speak Lashon Hara, you watch CFL, you do these other things. Oops, sorry, that was a slip. Any case, you do all these other things that causes negativity, that causes you to draw away from God. It takes a double helix and splits it again. So a person's going to say, What do you mean? They just ate from the tree of knowledge. What's the big deal? So if a person transgresses, if a Jew, it's not the same as a non-Jew, because a non-Jew doesn't have the source of that soul. Right? The source of their soul doesn't have any connection above to a certain extent. Can't do the same thing as what a Jew does. Because you see, Rabbi Chaim Coffman brings a proof from Titus. What did Titus do? Right? Titus destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. He destroyed the temple. Right? He took a prostitute, right? Opens up the Holy of Holies, takes off the paroches, takes off the cover, right, of the ark, does the jitterbug. We'll make it clean here. Keep it PG-13 because I know Canada has these type of laws. So in general, he's doing the jitterbug in the Holy of Holies. Comes along Rav Chaim Coffman, he said, okay, he did something terrible in this world. Now in the upper world, there's also what they call a Beis HaMikdash in heaven. There's also a temple in heaven. What goes on there, whatever, the whole story. But there's a correspondence. There's a physical, there's a spiritual. So it comes along with Chaim Coffman and says, Titus did the jitterbug. What happened to the Beis HaMikdash in heaven? Nothing. In other words, what he does has no spiritual effect. A Jew, totally different story. Totally different story. We have the ability to make worlds, to destroy worlds, depending on our actions. Someone's going to come along and say, but the non-Jews think God's up there, and he's so lofty, and he doesn't care, whatever. So if I'm an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust, and what I do doesn't matter, go back and read the Bible. Go back and read Genesis with clear eyes. Now you see the eights of Das, the tree of knowledge, in a totally different light. It shows my actions really matter. And I have the ability to draw these worlds closer together or not. That's the power of Torah. It either draws people closer or, God forbid, it can go the other way.
Wow.
But it can bring out a lot of light. A little bit of Torah can push away a lot of darkness. Right? So the essence of what we do in our actions, again, forgetting about Kabbalah, whatever, the whole point is to show what we do matters in a major way, right? Certainly Jews have that effect because you don't see anywhere else in the world, if an Italian in Brooklyn does something wrong, right? Whatever, gets caught for fraud, they say, all Italians, right? They start boycotting all Italians. No more oil. Right? That's it. And we're going to start beating up Italians. Never happened. Koreans? Never happened. Chinese? Never happened. Blacks? Maybe. But there's racism out there. But why should Jews be singled out? Secular Jews, religious Jews, what's the difference? Because there's a concept all Jews are related. All Jews are responsible one for the other. You don't see that by the other nations. So that means collectively, if we do something wrong, right? I mentioned my introduction when I spoke on Tanakh talking about gambling. I said, someone asked me, they said, I saw an Orthodox Jew in a casino. They said, well, don't you hold that's forbidden? I said, yes. I said, what were they doing in the casino? I said, probably gambling, having a good time, having some drinks, whatever. It's a lot of fun. The atmosphere, the environment, tremendous. Entertainment, so much fun to lose money, right? Entertainment, all this. But someone sees something like that, they say, oh, you Jews, you bloodsuckers, the guy was in a casino. What does it do with anything? It means we're all related. That means our actions matter for better or for worse. And they can affect us in this world. They can affect us in the next. They can affect the spiritual world in a major way that we don't see. Right? So people look at the stories in Genesis, and I always tell people it's either Kabbalah or that's it. It's very hard to understand. Now you have to remember one other thing is that Adam, what happened after they eat from the tree of knowledge? So after everyone passes the buck and everyone gets punished, God says, all right, everyone out of the pool, throws them out of the Garden of Eden. He says, get out of the pool. That's it. Game over. Why?
Get out of the pool. Never heard it that way, Rabbi.
That's why you have me on, because I make you laugh. No one makes you laugh more than I do. That's for sure. So he says, all right, everyone out. What is he afraid of? What's God afraid of? What else is left in the Garden of Eden? Tree of life. Now, God already said, person has to die, has to go in the ground. If they eat from the life, fame! I'm gonna live forever. Right? They think they're gonna live forever. So what does God do? He puts these short little fat kids, right? He puts these angels, these fiery angels with swords to guard the tree of life. Because if man eats from the tree of life, they can't get their true atonement. Right? They start chomp, chomp, chomp. Fame! Right? They're gonna live forever. No. That goes against 100% what they're doing here. Right? It goes against the fact that they have to get atonement. They have to go in the ground. Can't live forever. God says, all right, out of the pool. You're out. That's why they get thrown out. So when you look at that story, okay, so I told a little more energetic, as the energetic bunny would do it. But people are going to look at it in a different way now. And they're going to see that, this is really what's going on. Really, actions matter. They brought death to the world.
But let's face it. We all know Hashem permitted the tree into the garden,
Right.
So if he only wanted people to partake of the tree of life, there wouldn't have been a tree of knowledge of good and evil. But it's there.
It wasn't like it was the ugliest fruit also. We're going to make the greatest,
Neveress,
most luscious, whatever. But who did the snake go after? He didn't go after Adam. Because Adam would have said, you shut up. I'm not going to listen to you. God said don't eat from the tree. He went to Eve. And he was able to seduce her and convince her. Right? That's why he went to her, not to Adam. Right? The whole story. It's a whole story in and of itself. So let's get to the third part of the Mishnah here. Let's actually finish this Mishnah. Chesed. Right? One of the three things that the world stands on is doing acts of loving kindness. King David tells us, Psalms chapter 89, verse 3, for I said forever will your kindness be built, the heavens you establish your faithfulness in them. So how do you do chesed? What's the aspect of chesed? It means you make a bride and groom happy at their wedding. You dance in front of them, you wish them mazel tov, that's chesed. Right? They're the king and the queen. Right? You do an act of chesed towards them. Right? You also comfort mourners. They have somebody they're obligated to mourn for. A Jew has an obligation to mourn for father, mother, sister, brother, God forbid, a child or a spouse. So when someone dies, you go comfort the mourner. Actually, I just made a video yesterday, put it up today, about how to properly eulogize. One thing I'll just mention is that you never, if you have to eulogize someone, never lie, never exaggerate, because if you exaggerate, that soul is there listening before it gets judged. And if you exaggerate and the soul didn't do things that you say it did, or you're praising the soul for things that they shouldn't have done or whatever, that's certainly worse than even killing them. 10 times worse. I was at a mourner's house once, and someone tells the spouse, oh, I remember your husband. This is a Jewish guy. Right? I remember your husband by the smorgasbords, by the shrimp, by the this. And I'm like, it's like, oh, I shouldn't be saying this. I'm like, get out. I was
Homer Simpson. Yeah.
I was like, yeah. It's like the buzzer. Pull this guy. That's a praise? That a Jew ate shrimp? They're not supposed to eat? They eat all this trade food, all this non-kosher food? That's a praise? Heard it with my own ears. Right? I can't make this stuff up. Any case, when you comfort mourners, right, you have to know what to say. In a lot of secular, houses, the only thing they don't speak about is the mourner itself, because it's too real. About the person who died. But that's the whole point. You're giving people strength for what the person did. The good things that they did. You go visit the sick. Bury the dead. Also part of chesed. Right? And that's called the chesed shel emes. Why is it called true chesed? Because you don't get anything back. They can't pay you back. That was the chesed. Yaakov wanted Yosef to do, not to bury him in Egypt. It was the chesed shel emes because he's not getting anything back. Okay, he gets the mitzvah of listening to his father. right? Big mitzvah of listening to his father. But when a person buries the dead, he helps bury the dead, or he's there, whatever, what benefit does he get? He ain't getting anything, right? No inheritance, nothing. Person can't give him anything. So Talmud tells us Chesed's greater than charity. That Chesed is greater than tzedakah. Why? Because Chesed can be done amongst poor people and rich people. You can do Chesed with a rich person, right? You can do any kind of act of loving kindness for them. But charity is only done with the poor. Somebody
I guess I wanted to know the difference between charity and Hesed.
Yeah,
I got an idea.
Charity, in theory, could be done with a rich person also. Let's say he lost his money or he needs a loan or whatever. But technically, maybe you could do charity with a rich person. But that's the difference. Charity is only done really with poor people. Chesed is also greater than charity because it's done with the body. Or it can be done with money. You can do Chesed with the body. Right? Charity, how can charity be done? Money. Credit card, check, whatever. Right? But something's got the value of money. So it's interesting. The Talmud brings out that if you give money to a poor person, you get 6 blessings. You get 6 blessings. If you help someone through a difficult time, you do chesed with them, say nice words to them, try and give them strength, get double. Almost double, 11. 11 blessings. You see, chesed is greater. Now God fixed to the world. He wanted people to do chesed. So he gave Jews tremendous amount of mitzvahs. So who is the par excellence of chesed? It's Avraham. Right? He did chesed with others. He taught them. He fed them. We, the Jewish people, the offspring of Avraham. Right? It's interesting. If you look at charity in general, Jews exponentially give more than any other group combined. Right? Certainly when it comes to charity. Chesed, also not comparable to anybody else. Because if you go to any Jewish community, any Orthodox Jewish community in the world, you'll find gemachim. What's the gemach? It means literally gimulus chesed. But it can be for all kinds of things. It can be, and it's free. Right? They're not charging you for it. You could go to, you could get medicine.
Classes.
You could get medicine. You could get glasses if you don't have challah for Shabbos. Right? Someone has the gemach for that. They have a lawnmower. People have a lawnmower gemach. Your lawnmower doesn't work. Want to borrow someone's lawnmower? I mean, the list is unbelievable. Totally unbelievable. You'd be surprised. A fax gemach, an email gemach. You name it. You name it. You don't see it. You don't see it by any other group. Certainly don't see it.
It's definitely something that Noahites can do, right?
No, that's for sure. Yeah. That is for sure. You don't, in the secular Jewish world, they don't have this. Free loans, they don't have that. If you borrow money from someone, they'll say, okay, I'll lend you $100. You give me back 150. You give me back 110. That's the way of the world. Right? The Torah says you're not allowed to lend with interest to a Jew. A non-Jew you can. But the Talmud, if I remember correctly, says, but isn't that the way of the world? If you have money to lend and someone else needs it, you should charge them. You're not using that money now. You're losing out. Right? But there's also a chok. It's a law that doesn't make sense. Why shouldn't I get money back? Okay, maybe you're not going to get 150 back. Get 110, 150. Why should I get something for my money? That's the way of the world. Torah says you're not allowed to. Right? There's different cases where it's according to the Torah, according to the rabbis, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, you don't see any other group, nobody has these type of things other than the Orthodox Jewish community. And in any Orthodox Jewish community, you can almost find anything. You can find wine gemach. If they didn't have wine for Shabbos, challah gemach, different things. They have a special pillow you put the baby on for circumcision. They have that. They have an outfit gemach. I mean, it's all kinds of things. It's unbelievable. So there's a story. Rabbi Yochanan, one of the rabbis, went out. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, famous Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, went out from Jerusalem, and Rabbi Yeshua was with him. and they saw the temple in ruins. Rabbi Yeshua said he was depressed, and he said, woe to the place where you could be atonement for our sins been destroyed. Can't bring any sin offerings. Right? Can't bring any offerings. Rabbi Yochanan was a little more optimistic, and he said, don't be dismayed. There's still atonement in this world. Even if even if there's no Beis Hamikdash, even if there's no temple, what is that? That is, we do chesed. We can get an atonement by doing chesed with one, with other people. And we see that helping others is something that upholds the world. Give. When it comes to charity, for instance, Tornus Rufus, if I remember, asked Rabbi Akiva, if your God can give, can supply the world with food and everything else, why the poor people? Why the poor people? Rabbi Akiva says, so the rich have mitzvahs to do. They can help. They're so busy doing other things, it saves them from hell because they can help others. Right? You're right. God can sustain anybody. But when someone's in need, you get others to help. No one ever wants to be in need, but it brings people together. Right? It's also brought down, God tells us doing chesed one to another is so important. It's greater than all the sacrifices King Solomon sacrificed.
Wow.
Just doing one act of chesed. Now, the last thing maybe we'll go over a little bit, because this is actually a little bit juicy, that the Talmud asks, I think I mentioned this a little bit last week, what can save us from the birth pangs of the coming of the Messiah? What we call Chevlei Mashiach. What do we say? Torah and Chesed. Right? Learning Torah, doing acts of loving kindness. So when I asked Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov Fisher, Diane Fisher, one of the great rabbis of the last generation, I asked him about this, and he says, Torah and Chesed. It's what the Talmud says. Maybe a little feisty. Was a little feisty. And I asked him, and? He goes, what? You think I know more than the Talmud? You think I'm greater than the rabbis? That's it. Torah and Chesed. So that means that if a person seriously learns Torah like a business, what's the blessing? What's the blessing a person makes, a Jew makes every morning over the Torah? Blessed are you, God, King of the universe. La'asoik b'divrei Torah. What does the word la'asoik mean? To engage in Torah like business. Why? The blessing could have been lilmod Torah, to learn Torah. That means that if a person takes learning Torah seriously, like a business, that every spare second when they're not working or they're involved in chesed a lot, that has the power to save us. So the idea is, if we would look at Torah, at Torah learning, like Bill Gates looks at money and staying on top, right? He works, 12, 14, 15 hours a day because he wants to stay on top. If we would learn Torah like he does about money and in business, we would have been Torah giants a long time ago. In other words, he eats, drinks, and sleeps what he does because he wants to be the best at what he does. And he wants to be on top. We're just lazy. We're lazy. Okay,
not you, Rabbi.
Some people are lazy, right? We're all lazy to a certain extent, right? But at the end of the day, when a person's got an obligation to put food on the table, and and therefore when you're working, you don't have an obligation to learn. But the second you're not working, you got an obligation to learn. That means if your wife needs help in the house, she has to send you out to learn for a couple of hours. Even if someone asked a great rabbi, is it better I learn at home, or if I go to synagogue to learn, I'm for sure going to fall asleep. Right? Nothing to talk about. So the rabbi answered him and said, definitely better for you to go and learn, even if you're going to fall asleep. Why? Because your kids see how important learning is. Even if you're tired, even you're dead tired, you are showing them by example that you are going out. You are going out even if you're going to fall asleep. but you're going out to show how important Torah is. So that's why you don't make the blessing lilmod Torah, to learn Torah. You make the blessing lasoik. It should be a business. That every spare second you're not working, you're not involved in chesed. You need both. You need to help others if you can. And you need to learn Torah like a business. So I'll give an example. My Rebbe was a teenager, so he was learning yeshiva in London, the only yeshiva in London during the war. And people didn't have money, right? Certainly yeshiva students didn't have money. And, people were very poor. So he wanted them to give meiser, right? To give a tenth. They didn't have any money, so what should they do? So he had to set up a program called the Avodas HaKodesh, the sanctification of serving. What does that mean? What did they do? They had older students twice a week for an hour learn with younger students. That if they had questions in the Gemara or Halacha or whatever, that they could help answer them. So they gave of their time. They gave a couple of hours during the week, and he said that was a tremendous thing. Right? Because if a person has to give over, whatever, you have to know what you're saying. You can't just give it over and shluff it off, because then someone's going to call you on it. Right? But so you have to be very much grounded. They're going to say, why is that a chesed? Right? Why is that ma'aser? Why is that a chesed? So Moshe Schneider said, you know why? Because that's going to help your own learning. You have to give of yourself to help others. And when you give of yourself to help others, you don't lose out.
Beautiful stuff. Yeah.
You only gain. Right. One other aspect, is we mentioned that, we're living in the time of Chevlei Mashiach. Right. The birth pains of the coming of the Messiah, and seemingly it's only going to get worse before it gets better. Right. That unfortunately, I don't think is any question. But that being the case, everyone agrees. There are a number of signs that we're living in the Messianic era. Right? I don't think there's any question. I don't think any question that is the case. Right? But this is something that everybody can do. This is something, as the Talmud says, that, can save you. And all the craziness that's going to go on, is learning as much as you can and doing chesed as much as you can. Learning builds the person, changes the person, gives a person ability to change character traits, to become greater, not to think of themselves. And when you're involved in chesed, an act of loving kindness, it's not about you. You're not doing it to get a great name. You're not doing it to put a plaque on the wall. You're doing it because it's a mitzvah to help another person. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, Jew or non-Jew. Right? Obviously, we look to our own. But, if a non-Jew's stranded, you can help them. You should help them. You say, let the non-Jews help them. Why? If you have the ability to help, be a Kiddush Hashem, be a sanctification of God's name as well. Right? So, when we see what's going on and all the craziness, right? As Rav Fisher said, what? You think I know better? You think I know better than the rabbis in the Talmud? This is what you have to do. Right? But it has to be serious. Right? That's why Torah has to be looked at as an asik. It has to be looked at as a business. Because if it's not looked at as a business, it's, I'll learn. Right? We'll see the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says later, when I have time, I'll learn. Well, that's great. Who said you're going to have time? Maybe you'll be dead tomorrow. You won't learn. Right? You got to learn every day. Some more, some less, this, that. You got to find the time. You got to steal time to learn. Most people commute to work. I mentioned this before. Some people half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, traffic, this, that. What are you listening to the news for? You give me 10 minutes, I'll give you the world. Well, you heard the news 10 minutes ago. Same stuff. Didn't change. There is a press conference. There isn't a press conference. Whatever. Why aren't you listening? Why aren't you listening to Torah? You're sitting in traffic anyway. So what's the difference? Why are you wasting your time? You think, I can't concentrate. I have to listen to music. Maybe that's true. But at the end of the day, you pop in an MP3, you listen away an hour, half an hour, 40 minutes, is that tremendous change.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
we as people, though, sometimes we do need to decompress. We need to stress relieve, but I think there are those that take stress relief way too far, and then they're in the wrong side for sure. But I mean, if somebody's listening to classical, or if they're on their way to work, I mean, I worked in Toronto, Ontario, running a car dealership, a big one time, and all I can say is the traffic jam on the Queen Elizabeth Way or the 401, they're huge. It's like LA, and you're bumper to bumper. I took advantage of those times, but I would have a good travel difference. I'd love to decompress, and I think that recharges in order to do mitzvahs.
That can to a certain extent, but I'll leave you with the following thought. Someone once told me, they said after 120 years, meaning when you're dead, you can sleep and relax as much as you want. So when I told my Rebbe that, he said, "Who said?"
So full bore now, eh?
He said, "You got plenty to do, upstairs also." So they say if a person's, is really tired, okay, so you learn something lighter, you listen to something lighter. You're right. People like downtime. So when I did this show about sports and entertainment, whether it's idolatry, not idolatry, different things, people use that as downtime. Well, it's better they use that than other things they could be doing. Sports is a great thing, keeps people off the streets, keeps them invading stadiums and keeps them interested in whatever. Imagine if you didn't have it, what people would be doing in the world, right? But in general. The Torah philosophy is there really is no downtime. I hate to be the burden of bad news, right? You're striving in this world.
Precious.
When you leave your mind open until your brains fall on the floor, right? That's all the evil inclination needs. I just gave over this morning Duties of the Heart about the power of the evil inclination. So even if you beat the evil inclination once, twice, 5 times, it keeps coming back. And it keeps coming back. It's not going to tell you, I want you to desecrate Shabbos. I want you to kill somebody. I want you to do this. Not going to do that. It's going to make a hole in the armor. It's going to make a chink in the armor. Right? It's going to bore a little hole. And then that hole eventually is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger until you do it. And it may not manifest itself for another 20 years. For another 10 years. For another 5 months. Right? But if you leave your mind open, to a certain extent, what you do is you give ample firepower to the evil inclination. And when the evil inclination is all encompassing, it doesn't rest. It just keeps going. A person could work on something for 10 years, 15 years, really master it, and then a little bit of downtime, gone. Lost. Can happen.
Tragedy.
It can happen. But so if a person leaves themselves open, even a little bit, that vulnerability can come back and bite you.
Rabbi, now I have seen so many situations where the kindest of deeds, somebody spins it and sours it. They literally twist it and distort it. And, I see how the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, plays in on that. Sometimes it gets to the point where no matter how kind, no matter how loving, for some reason, if you're trying to go in a direction, I don't know, sometimes somebody's going to sour it. Somebody's going to distort, twist. They call them spin doctors. You see them terrible in the U.S. I mean, they literally will take a story, flip it around to something that is absolutely diametrically opposed to what it was intended for. Is this how if you let your foot off the gas in study, the evil inclination can nullify? I mean,
social media is horrible in a lot of ways. The news, the cynicism, everything, what does the evil inclination come and do? What is its purpose? Is to confuse you. Is to put doubts in your mind. It's to destroy it. Right? So the more a person's going to listen to this stuff, you're now going to question certain things that you would never question in general. I mean, you hear any of these, left-wing, talk shows or whatever, they have an agenda. right? The gay community, they have an agenda, a very, very strong agenda. They'll make you think twice or three times. Am I really straight? Should I be straight? Why not? Why? This, that. It's a natural way of looking at the world. And the Torah says, no, it's not. It's totally unnatural. And it's not the way the world should be. But they have so much power. They have unbelievable amount of power, what they're teaching you when the Torah says, person gets married, you cling to your wife. It doesn't say you cling to your boyfriend. It says you cling to your wife. That's the natural way, right? We'll keep it clean. That is the natural way, of perpetuating the generations. Husband and wife. All of a sudden, 10 years ago, whatever, this thing takes off like wildfire. And who's to say what I think is normal? What that does is that questions everything.
Yeah, everything.
And so when I was much younger, I didn't have any information to deal with, with certain things. Like, I think I once mentioned about the documentary hypothesis, right? Everybody in academia holds by it, 4 authors and a redactor, right? But I believe, for whatever reason, the Torah came from God. God spoke to Moshe. Not any proof, right? But I had a lot of doubts. So I had to look up things that answered these doubts. Right, but that's what the conservative movement's good at. Bringing out, we're so open-minded, but you're losing thousands. You're giving them philosophies that don't work. They don't make sense. But now I understand why they don't make sense, because there's a lot of proof against them. But if you don't have proof against them, you have a philosophical crisis. How do I know it's true? How do I know it's not true? And a person, it's not a good place to be. Because then, you're in academia, right? You're part of a university, and in places that are more philosophical, more left-wing and all this. And what do they try and do? Break down your belief system. Most people are not Rhodes Scholars. They don't think straight, right? So they'll say certain things, but they don't know how to answer. They don't know how to argue. So what do? They try and break you down. And what's the purpose of doing that? It's fun in a certain way. Right? Because then you turn someone into a pretzel, and then what? You destroy them. Because now they second guess everything they do. Yeah. And all their beliefs go out the window. Now they have to come up with new beliefs. And where they come from. And how do you know anything is true? That's why university is so bad. You say, oh, you're not open-minded. You're right, I'm not open-minded. Because there's a lot of heresy. There's a lot of stupidity. And if a university ever proves to me that someone can go in and come out more moral, show me.
Exactly. Show me. Good point. More moral.
It's heard a great rabbi say you can learn a lot of good things in university, like narcotics, or booze and women. Like, okay, that's out there also. Not good.
What about PhDs? PhDs with a God complex.
Yeah, PhD, they say, what an MA is, right? Sorry, what a BS is. An MA is just more of it, and a PhD is piled higher and deeper. So people think, okay, I was in academia, for a certain extent, right? So people think, oh, you just got an axe to grind, you don't have a master's, you don't have a PhD. You're right. But a PhD, let's keep in mind, I studied history, World War II is my specialty, right? Now, if I wrote a PhD on the socioeconomic rise of the Third Reich between the years 1933 and 1940, does that make me a world expert in World War II? No. It means I know one aspect of one subject that I wrote a 100-page paper for and I took oral exams. But people worship a PhD. I have a PhD in Torah, whether people like it or not. It's like I have a PhD and people don't think it matters. People think their opinion is just as valid. And they don't respect it. It's funny. And to a certain extent, people say all kinds of things. They have no idea what in the world they're talking about. Not at all. They'll quote things. They'll misquote things. Different things. You're going to, like I asked somebody once, or I wanted to ask somebody once. Someone's got a PhD in physics. Right? It's a great book called Genesis and the Big Bang. Written by Dr. Gerald Schroeder. Right? 6 Days of Creation, in physics. Now, you don't know that much about physics. Maybe you took physics in high school. He went to MIT. He went to MIT. Right, my hometown in Boston. He went to MIT. He's not a dummy. He told me anytime he ever spoke to college students, when he spoke about physics, lost everybody. He lost everybody in the first 5 minutes. Physics, forget Torah. Now, if someone says, you know what? I saw a Wikipedia article, and now I'm going to totally destroy Dr. Gerald Schroeder. Are you an idiot? You think Gerald Schroeder's going to give you the time of day? If a person's mastered almost the entire Talmud and Chumash and other things, and you've never even seen the Bible, you never read the Bible from cover to cover, you never even saw the movie. You didn't even see the movie. 10 Commandments, you still think it's Charlton Heston. It's a good thing he played John the Baptist and he played everyone else just to be safe. You never know.
Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, whatever. So in the end, you are not going to take a Wikipedia article and try and destroy a PhD in physics. Now, why does somebody have the chutzpah to say, I think the Orthodox of this, I think that, I think the other thing? You don't know anything, you can't read Hebrew. Why in the world should I even give you the time of day? You can say, oh, you're conceited. It has nothing to do with being conceited. If someone's been learning, 15 years, 20 years, I think they know something. I think they know quite a bit. And you with no education, you think you're going to answer them? Come on. You wouldn't do it in any other discipline, but it gives you an excuse. You say, where was God during the Holocaust? I don't understand the questions. Where he always was. What's the question? So why did God kill so many people? Hey, I got a great book. It's called Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust. You want to read it? It's like, no, it's just a question I ask rabbis. Makes them fidget. Next. We're going to waste your time with that. It takes a lot of people to kill 6 million people. You got the Latvians, you have the Croatians, you have the Poles, you have the Germans, you have the Russians. Not a question, where was God? The question is, where is man? Then I'll say, you're a fanatic. Where am I a fanatic? Where's the fanaticism? Right? But people cop an attitude. They cop an attitude and think they know something because they saw something on a website. And they look at it and say, oh, but you think this. As somebody sometimes will ask me, ask me a certain question. I'll say no. Or I'll say yes or whatever. Say, yeah, but this person says like this. Yeah, it's a difference of opinion. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
so why are you asking me?
Goading or baiting somebody into an argument.
Ask. They want to know, what do you hold? What does your community do? I understand. But if you ask somebody their opinion, you get to, I got another opinion. I got 5 other opinions. Okay. So hold by them. But which one do you do? Come on. I can watch there. I don't have my head grow. But people cop an attitude. They totally cop an attitude. They think they have the right to say anything. I had somebody tell me, a friend of my father's, would say, when I went to Cheder and I went to Jewish school and the Rebbe hit me and that's what Judaism is. I said, but it's not. And this guy was like a broken record. So finally I said, yeah, but that happened like 60 years ago. Maybe he had a bad Rebbe, and he kept repeating the same thing. So I heard Roberto Wine should be well. Say, imagine kids in 4th grade. 5th grade has a bad teacher. He has a bad experience. Kid says, I'm done. I'm going to work. Be a ball boy. Whatever. I'm going to go get a job. No one says that. Everyone says you chalk it up to experience. You got to get over it. You might have to speak to someone about it. And you move on. But what do secular Jews? They'll throw out some block, some issue. And they'll say, you know what? Now I don't have to do anything. Because this person did this. He claims to be Orthodox. I'm out of here. It's an excuse. Right? Total excuse.
Wow. Well, there is something to be said for delayed gratification. I mean, there's lessons that we learn if people just, hold off and learn more, they're then equipped to do more. But inevitably, it's all got to come around to where you're actually implementing. And I just love how the Hebrew people teach that more. I really think you've touched on some beautiful, beautiful points today, Rabbi, specifically about how we're just insignificant dust and yet so valuable.
Infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. You can quote me on that. I like saying that. It's a tongue twister, but you have to, We're almost the same age, so you can probably do it.
But yeah, but also important in the sense that we can begin to do kindness, and it can be a reflection.
People think what they do is insignificant. Like, you really think God cares? Like, if I tear toilet paper before on Shabbos, does it really matter? I think it matters. Definitely matters. You have to understand the bigger picture, right? You have to see how things work, But if not, then you think you can do whatever you want, and and picking and choosing doesn't work. We've spoken about that.
Well, Rabbi, we don't have a ton of questions, but there has been a few. Nothing serious. People are saying thank you, appreciating you sharing, especially with the energy that you share with. And
go.
Well, all I can say is scrolling through.
I've been up since 3:30 and I haven't taken a nap yet, so we're still.
And it's getting late there, isn't it? And I haven't had any caffeine,
no soda. Imagine if I had caffeine, you'd all be dead. So it's a good thing.
Well, you stay warm in the rain there if it's still raining. Well, we hope that the water, that the land there begins to thrive and blossom. But sure. I didn't realize it was that low. I mean, I live right beside a lake, and we've seen the table drought. We're prone. I'm in British Columbia. We're prone to wildfires. We've got lots of and I think it's been from years of them not using controlled burns in the right areas, And sadly, we get to come up from Washington State. We've had some here a couple of years back. It was so bad. It was like 6 weeks. You couldn't drive down Main Street in my town without driving through smoke. I mean, it was almost evacuation. A lot of places were evacuated, but all I can say is when it gets too dry. But in Israel, there's not as many trees, from my understanding. So drought.
Arabs do a good job trying to burn it down, but there are enough trees around. But still, you need the rain. That's for sure.
Yeah, for agriculture to thrive, and But Rabbi, any closing words? I mean, we've been at it for over an hour and 20 minutes. But I am grateful because I really think you tapped into some key points about service of God and loving kindness for sure. Can you break into the beginning a little bit, or maybe any closing words that you might like to share?
One thing I think is important we mentioned is the fact that a person thinks what they do doesn't matter. And they think, as we mentioned, God's up there, like, what does it need to do with man? Obviously, one of the 13 principles of the Rambam, of Maimonides, is, God does know the thoughts of man, and he's got the ability to reward and punish. So therefore, as we mentioned by the story of Adam and Eve, and eating from the tree, you say one act changed the course of history. Right? That one act is the difference between living forever and dying. And that everyone has to die. That's pretty significant. Right? But most people look at the world, and they hear the news and they see what's going on and all these different things, and it's all bad. It's all negative, most of it. Hear what's going on now, with Iran and what's going to be and this and that. It's scary in different ways. But one of the things I mentioned my Q&A, earlier today, is that, as my Rebbe says, I'm not worried about these people there or in Libya or in Syria or in any of these places. The only thing I'm worried about are Jews who live in the land and live in the palace of the king and transgress God's commandments. If we do what we're supposed to do, none of this happens. None of this matters, right? One of the things I mentioned, there have been a number of, public bus accidents, a number of people being killed over the last number of weeks. I don't think it's any coincidence whatsoever that you have major cities opening up buses on Shabbos for free. So when you look at that, and you say, who cares? Kfiyat datit, religious coercion. Live and let live. You're living in the palace of the king. When you live in the palace of the king, like what happened in Sodom, God says, all right, my language, everyone out of the pool. You're dead. Why? One of the reasons the commentary says is because it was in God's backyard. He had enough. And he said, with all the horrific things they did, I'm not going to allow it anymore. So, is this the only reason why there have been, bus accidents? I'm not saying the only reason. But the fact that public transportation, they want to open on the holiest day of the year for free, how can there not be repercussions?
Even if it's for free, yeah. It's missing the whole point.
Right? They want to uproot Torah. And if they want to uproot Torah, it's going to come at a serious price. There's a medrash in Psalms that says, talking about coming of the Messiah, there's a medrash that says that when the Messiah comes, Jews are not going to be in the land. They're going to be thrown out of the land. They're going to be in exile. Now, it's hard to imagine that, considering what's going on today. But Ehud Barak was willing to give 95% of the West Bank to Arafat.
Yeah, you mentioned that before.
So who says we have to be, physically thrown out? We could just leave. Like, I remember my Rebbe telling me this many years ago. So I said, what are you laughing at? You're also going to be in the desert. Right? But that could be literally. It could also be figuratively. Could be that have a foreign power here, meaning the mixed multitude, they're the ones in charge and all these different things. Okay. Right? But at the end of the day, we have no idea. Just because we're in power now, we've come back. It's hard to imagine being spit out again. Right? But the end of the book of Leviticus says, my language, chump don't want it, chump don't get it. God can just spit us out. Is that what's going to happen? Nobody knows. There's another measure that says if there's going to be this war of Gog and Magog, it's going to start with the king of Paras. Who's the king of Paras? Where's Paras? Iran. So could it happen that way? Could it happen a number of different ways. Nobody knows. Right? But in the end, there are a lot of things heating up. A lot of things tremendously heating up.
We see it over here.
You get very strong minorities of Muslims all over Europe. The Malbim says in Zechariah chapter 14, he says there's going to be a war. It's going to be a war of Edom against Yishmael. Edom meaning the Western world. Yishmael being the Muslims, being the Arabs. It's going to be a bloodbath. Why? Because he says they have Chilukei Deas and Das. They have difference of opinion in religion. Go figure. Before 9/11, right? So says the Malbim, they're gonna butcher each other, left and right. But when they realize that, hey, why are we doing this? It's all for the sake of the Jews. Then they're going to march to Jerusalem and try and destroy the Jewish people. That's when the Messiah comes, and that's the beginning of the end. So, could it happen that way? The Malbim wrote this about 100 years ago, a little more than 100 years ago. So, before 9/11, you're going to say, come on, war of Edom against Yishmael? Come on. Right? And as Bush was busy destroying Afghanistan, he goes, this is not a war against Islam. Sure. Destroyed half of Afghanistan looking for bin Laden. Right? So when you look at world events, what's going to be, nobody knows. The world's a powder keg.
But the framework can be, yeah. You can tell house.
It can happen anyway. That's why. When the Talmud says what's going to save us from the birth pains of the coming of the Messiah, Chevle Mashiach, that's what we're in now. And that's what's going on in a very strong way. And I think, unfortunately, it's only going to get stronger. You better be busy learning and doing chesed. That's the only thing. We have nothing else. We have nothing else. So a person has to be steadfast in that, and hold the Torah like the rock at Gibraltar. It doesn't move. And you just keep going, because once you stray, once you leave your mind open a little bit, that's it. It's over. Right? It's just the evil inclination, social media, this, that, keep making chink, 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 chink like a woodpecker. Bam, 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 bam. Right? And there's nothing to stop it. There's absolutely nothing to stop it. But if a person's involved in Torah like it's business, nothing else matters. So you say, yeah, maybe I need to listen to classical music. Maybe I should start drinking the caffeinated tea. Maybe. Right? Maybe I won't be jumping up and down so much. Could be. Right? But in the end, obviously we want the Messiah to come. Obviously, the world has to be whatever it's going to be. But that's the only thing that's going to save me. Right? They're going to say, if I have a spare few minutes, because I want my brain to chill. Let it chill on Torah. Forget about classical music. Forget about anything else. That's the only hope we have. right? And anything can happen, and it can get worse. It can get 10 times worse. That is what the Talmud says, and that's the only thing that's going to help us.
Wow. No, that's profound, Rabbi. I think maybe we should shut it down at that point, because that you really not much more you could add to that, folks. I want to encourage you to visit Rabbi Coffman on his YouTube page. Just look for him on YouTube. Check out Rabbi Chaim Coffman, or go to his website, orthodoxconversion.com. He's worthy of support. More than that, his messages are just wonderful and sound, and nobody seems to share quite like he does. I am so thankful that he spent years studying Torah, and now energetically shares it with us. And it's just a joy to spend time with Rabbi Coffman. So please feel free to check out his other classes. He's doing 9 a week or more, and don't be afraid to even support him a little bit. I know that he would appreciate it, and more than that, it might help pay the heat bills there with the rains going on in Israel. But he's worth it, folks. So
keep me dry.
So, Rabbi, are we on for next week still? Are we still aiming to do another Pirkei Avot? Because we've only gone through first chapter, second Mishnah.
Yeah, say we just finished the second Mishnah. Third Mishnah is about serving God because you have to, not because of reward. That's, what to speak about there.
Well, that's big, folks. So you heard it. You got the preview, folks. He's going to touch on, it sounds like Mishnah 1, chapter 3 next week. So we hope to see you then. Until then, folks, have a great week.